popping in. We are going to be recording this meeting just to let you know, but we will be shutting the recording off right before we do the questions and answers at the end. So just the actual presentation will be recorded. This is a Healthy Relationships for Teens Parent Caregiver Workshop presented by MAAV, WAAV, SAAV, and Responding. And we will have special guest Pathways to Restorative Communities who will be presenting as well. So we're excited you're all here. And my name is Amy Chiravalati. I am the Executive Director of Wakefield Alliance Against Violence, or WAAV. And I'm also a health teacher at the Galvin Middle School in Wakefield.
Yeah. I am Allie Calnan. I am the Survivor Advocate and Prevention Specialist at Melrose Alliance Against Violence.
Yes, and hello everybody. Welcome. My name is Meredith Shaw, and I'm the Executive Director at Melrose Alliance Against Violence and work with Allie.
Hi, everyone. My name is Megan Samborski. I am the chair of Stoneham Alliance Against Violence. We do youth healthy relationships education and domestic violence awareness in Stoneham. I think Danielle's just muted, but do you want me to talk for you, Danielle? And I have my vice chair, Danielle Nicholas, with us tonight, also from Stoneham Alliance Against Violence.
Can jump in. And I'm Rachel Angerhofer. I'm the Director of Domestic Violence Prevention Programs at Respond. And I'm here with Molly from Respond. Molly, are you able to introduce yourself?
Yes, sorry. Hi, my name is Molly Bracken. I am the domestic violence counselor and civilian advocate from Respond, and I work in and with the Malden, Wakefield, and Melrose Police Departments, and I cover the Malden District Court.
My turn. My name is Rebecca Taplin. I'm a partner at Pathways to Restorative Communities. I'm an educator with 30 years of experience, and I work as a facilitator for P2RC, where we teach restorative practices to schools, families, businesses, and in the community. Thank you. All right. We want to start tonight with a quick connection. I know we've all had a long day, but it's always great to kind of see who's in the room and get a beat on who's with us today. We're going to do an activity that's called This or That. If you're available and you can turn your camera on, I invite you to do that. And here's how this works. I'm going to give you a couple of choices. So say I say cat or dog. The cat, if you prefer cats, you're going to give heart hands. If you prefer dog, you're going to give the jazz hands. And if you prefer neither, you can like give a shrug, or you can get creative if you love both, right? You can do a little bit of both and just look around and see what other people are putting in so we can make a little bit of connection tonight. So our first set is about your preferences. It's the middle of winter. Do you prefer a hot spring or a cold plunge? So hot spring is heart hands, cold plunge is jazz hands. A lot of people want to be warm. Awesome. Next one. Time to get cozy. Paperback or e-reader? Awesome. All right. Are you an early bird or a night owl? Awesome. Okay. Next set of questions. Think about yourself as a human being. Are you big picture or detail oriented? Yeah, we got some combinations. Yeah. Would you prefer to fit in or stand out? And do you lean more towards comfort or effort? Depends. Awesome. And now thinking about you're here tonight in the role of raising children, raising teenagers. And so when you think about raising children, are you more Hands on or hands off? Are you more plan ahead with your kids or live in the moment? And the last one, do you feel like you're guided more by your heart or your mind? Awesome. Thank you, everybody. It's really nice just to see where we're coming from, and this kind of will help you get grounded so that we'll be ready for the rest of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Well, we know that we have a mix of parent and caregivers from various communities across the region, from various age levels, from elementary, middle, and high school. We also know we have some educators joining us, some community members, as well as some municipal leaders and other caring, trusted adults. So why are we here? We wanted to start with this quote that I've got up here from Angela Lee. She's the director of Love is Respect, which is a national organization to prevent, that's mission is to prevent and disrupt unhealthy relationships and intimate partner violence. And the way they do that is by empowering teens and young adults with inclusive, equitable, accessible educational opportunities, support, and resources. And Angela says that uplifting healthy relationships and empowering teens and young adults with education and resources is vital to preventing dating abuse. Having support from parents, peers, educators, and others can dramatically change outcomes for teens and young adults. And we wanted to start with this quote because it focuses on solutions and protective factors. We know that teen dating violence is a problem, and we know that it impacts teens' lives. And in a few moments, we're going to share some statistics that are very concerning. We wanted to start here and ground ourselves in our own agency and what we can do to prevent and protect our kids from dating abuse, because there is a lot that we can do. We know that by being here tonight, knowledge, awareness, education, information, that is really key. Strategies are key. Having communication pathways with your kids is really important. And talking early and talking often, all of that matters. So our goal in hosting this workshop is for you to leave our Zoomosphere feeling empowered because you're walking out with tools and strategies and knowledge, and you're not feeling fearful or overwhelmed. You're feeling empowered and you're feeling hopeful, because we know that caring adults are key supports in kids' lives, and they play a key role in protecting teens and young adults from dating abuse. So we wanted to ground ourselves here. And in that spirit, I wanted to mention that some of the content of this workshop may be difficult. So please take care of yourselves throughout our session together, throughout our time together, in the way that makes the most sense for you to take care of yourselves. So thank you.
Okay, so our goals for tonight are for you to be able to leave here knowing and being able to identify the signs of an unhealthy relationship that whoever you're here for may experience. So any teen in your life. We want to break the stigma. Talking about healthy relationships and how to identify unhealthy relationships is important to help us break that stigma. We want to teach you how to practice and model healthy relationships and communication skills. And we want to learn how to set and communicate boundaries so that we can then, teach our young people how to set and communicate boundaries themselves. We want to show you the signs so that you're able to recognize when someone you care about is in an unhealthy relationship, and then help them plan how to end that safely. Create a safety plan and a safe way to leave that relationship, because it's not always about, just leaving. So it's not always that simple. And we want to always put safety first. And then we'll finish by providing you with some resources that are both local and national that you can reach out to with further questions, should you have any.
Great. So Meredith talked a little bit about why we're here. So now we can go through why it's important to talk about healthy relationships with our kids. I'm just going to run through a few national statistics and local statistics so you can get a feel for why it's important. Obviously, parents are the most influential in a child's life, so arming you with this information is important. 1 in 3 teens report being verbally or psychologically abused. 1 in 10 teens report being victims of dating violence. And about 20% of students ages 12 to 18 experience bullying nationwide. The Middlesex League, our local schools are a part of a group that does a youth risk behavior survey every 2 years for the middle school and high school. That helps to guide information that we get from the students that can assist educators and local groups to develop plans to address issues that the kids are experiencing in schools, whether it has to do with bullying, substance use, teen dating violence. So I'm going to run through a few stats from the last one. 1 in 10 students in the Middlesex League have done sexual things they did not want to do. 1 in 10 students in the Middlesex League have been emotionally hurt or controlled by someone they were dating. 1 in 30 students in the Middlesex League have been physically hurt by someone they were dating. And 1 in 15 students in the Middlesex League have skipped school because they did not feel safe.
So now we're going to ask you to kind of participate a little bit here. If in the chat, you can answer this, but don't hit return till I tell you and they'll all come in at once. But to you, like when I say healthy relationship, what does that mean? What makes a relationship healthy? So take a minute to think about what you think constitutes a healthy relationship and then write it in your chat box. And then I'm going to give you a countdown. There's no wrong answers here. So we're going to hit return in 3, 2, 1, and they should all start to come in. Awesome. Yeah, so I'm just going to read some of them. Being safe, self-respect, respect, communication, shared power, feeling safe, communication, active listening, collaborative, kindness, honesty, fun. These are awesome. Good communication. Yeah. On the next slide. Yeah, so you guys got a lot of these, right? So what does make a relationship healthy is trust, respect, communication, fun. You guys said all these. Individuality, quality, support, acceptance, boundaries. You can be yourself. There's balance, and you can be honest with with yourself and with the other person. So now let's look at the flip side. What makes a relationship unhealthy? What qualities don't we want in a relationship? So again, write it in the chat. No wrong answers, but don't hit return till I count you down. What are some qualities of an unhealthy relationship? And then we'll hit return in 3, 2, 1. Yeah, hitting, jealousy, lack of trust, control, abusive behavior, disrespect, anger, control. Control is in there a bunch. Jealousy, yes. Hitting, controlling, good communications, good, awesome. Yeah, and if we take a look at our list, you guys got a lot of these. Poor imbalance of power, no boundaries, pressure, lack of communication, hostility, violence, any violence, jealousy, and a lot of times kids especially confuse jealousy with love. So that's a real important one to explain to the teens in your life about how jealousy is not love. Dishonesty, intimidation, and dependence.
We'll talk more about what makes a relationship abusive, and kind of how some of those unhealthy behaviors can morph into becoming an abusive relationship. So a lot of times these relationships don't start off as abusive. It's really common for them to start off being healthy, and maybe even borderline some unhealthy behaviors, but a lot of times they do start off healthy. And then over time, They might slowly move into unhealthy and then abusive, or potentially go right towards abusive behaviors. But the reason why we outline the relationship as being on a spectrum is because it really can go back and forth and shift between healthy and unhealthy and abusive behaviors throughout the course of the relationship. So, in a lot of times, the healthy parts of that relationship are what victims and survivors hold on to. And the people that are perpetrating the violence, or the unhealthy behaviors in the relationship know that victims hold on to those healthy moments. And often those are what keep people in these relationships as well, are knowing that there's this possibility, or there were these times where some of these healthy or good things might have been happening. So some other examples of what might make a relationship abusive as opposed to unhealthy. So there is a little bit of a difference there, and sometimes it might be that unhealthy behaviors are being repeated, or it could be that it's escalating into more severe things such as physical violence. What are some other types or categories of abusive behavior that come to mind? And you can also feel free to write them in the chat. Control, financial control or abuse, alienation, tracking locations, coercion, that's a good one. And coercion, or coercive control, was recently added to the Massachusetts law that defines what abuse is. Gaslighting. Yeah, these are all great examples. Chipping away at their confidence. Ableism. Thank you for sharing and for writing some responses. I appreciate that. You know, and some of the more obvious forms of an abusive relationship does include physical abuse. However, there are also other forms of abuse as well.
I am guessing that some of these are a little self-explanatory in terms of the kind of abuse that they are. I know that sometimes people aren't always clear as to what financial abuse looks like. So I'm gonna sort of pick that one out just specifically to like sort of give some a concept of it. And it's an example I've used in previous trainings. So when you think about juveniles, you don't think about financial abuse, like how can you abuse a child who lives with their parents in a relationship. One example I always think of is, and I shouldn't laugh. There was a former job. There was a girl there who would ask all the new male employees what shoe size they were, and they would tell her, and they'd be like, "Why?" And she's like, "Well, every time me and my boyfriend have a fight, I sell his shoes." So, like, it's sort of that sort of thing. It can be like destroying their property so that they have to replace it. It can be taking their money so they can't purchase lunch, taking their money so that that if they have a job, it's things like that. It's financial abuse can take a lot of forms. I can only really think of a lot of adult examples, so I will keep those to myself. But I know that financial abuse does seem to trip people up the most because, how do you financially abuse a middle schooler or a teenager? So that's one that I always like to sort of pick out.
And it can speak to the underlying dynamics of the relationship, where there might be an expectation, or somebody just verbally saying that, you have to pay for certain things because you're in a relationship, or if you pay, I don't have to pay you back because we're dating.
Yes. Another example, it's a little extreme, but it can happen with young adults is, well, you give me this money or this amount of money, or I'm going to tell people something personal that you shared with me, or I'm going to share something personal and embarrassing potentially about our relationship that happens just between the two of us. It's things like that, and that can also spill into the technological or digital abuse, as well as potentially, unfortunately, sexual. I don't think I need to elaborate any more on that.
Are there any other forms of abuse that anybody might be thinking of that we didn't include here? Okay. And just to elaborate a little bit on the cultural or identity type of abuse, that could be using somebody's, religion or beliefs about themselves or anything to do with kind of how you see yourself or your race or your sexuality against that person.
Or any
Someone in the
specific
chat. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say someone in the chat also pointed out isolation, hiding meds, things like that. So if you wanted to speak on that a little bit more as well, you certainly could do that. Isolation is also a really big component. So just wanted to let you know that was added to the chat.
Yeah. Isolation can take a lot of forms. Again, I can really only think of adult ones, but I think a pretty major one that is across all age ranges is convincing, your partner, those people aren't your friends, or don't talk to them, or don't hang out with them, hang out with me, spend time with me. What do you mean you're going to the movies with your friends? I want to hang out. And, on the off chance that you don't do what they're saying, potentially, just texting you nonstop or calling nonstop, trying to get your attention and take your attention away from the people that you're with.
Yeah, isolation can be really complicated because it isn't necessarily physically isolating somebody. It's messing with their relationships with other people. It could even be with their family members as well, to try to get that person to really only be reliant on the person that's abusing them.
Yeah. All right, so red flags. So much like the healthy relationship spectrum, where it goes green, healthy, yellow, questionable, red flags, and unhealthy relationships, it's sort of the same with red flags in relationships. There are definite red flags, there are green flags that show a healthy relationship, and then there are those flags in the middle that can be either unhealthy or healthy, and it kind of depends how it lands and how it affects the relationship and the control and power dynamic within a relationship. Some and I think we kind of touched on them already. Like, one of the red flags is constantly checking in when you're not together. If your partner is constantly like emailing you and calling you and asking for your location, what you're doing, who you're with, what you're talking about, if they're requiring that you share your location with them at all times, so they know where you are at all times, that's a big one. If you find yourself, or if your middle school or teenage loved one is changing their habits or goals suddenly to accommodate their partner, that's a pretty big red flag. Again, if they're spending less time with their friends and family and really focusing their time and attention on their partner, that's a red flag. If you find that your loved one is suddenly apologetic about every little thing, whether it's real or not, that could mean that they are in a relationship with someone where they spend the majority of their time apologizing for everything that does not fall in line with what their partner wants and expects and demands of them. And we touched on isolation as well. Another big one that I think trips a lot of kids up, and this can also kind of be a yellow flag as well, because it really can depend on the situation, but becoming too serious too fast. Saying I love you too fast, becoming exclusive and spending a lot of time together and doing more traditional couple things together too soon into the beginning of a relationship can be a red flag. But sometimes that can also be a yellow flag or maybe a green one. It really does depend on the relationship. To give an example, and it's not my ideal example, but the man that I'm seeing, we became exclusive pretty quickly. We spend a healthy amount of time together, but we also have plenty of time alone. We have separate friend groups and, mutual friend groups. But again, we became exclusive very quickly. Um, if we became exclusive very quickly and on all of a sudden my friends are like, "Hey, where are you?" And Rachel's like, "Hey, you seem pretty unfocused at work." Like that would be something that would sort of turn that more into a red flag more than like a yellow or green. Um, does that make sense? I mean, I can't see the chat. So if anyone is asking questions or sharing ideas, please let me know.
Yeah, I'll definitely let you know if some things are added to the chat. Folks did add um, controlling different aspects of their partner's lives, like the way they dress or just being controlling in general.
Yes, that's another big one too. I think that is pretty noticeable. If you rock a certain aesthetic for the majority of your life, you have your aesthetic, you have your comfort wear, your comfort look, and all of a sudden you're drastically, or even if you're drastically changing that, and they don't seem like they're super comfortable with it, but they're doing it to make X, Y, or Z happy. Like that's a pretty big tell as well. And I would honestly personally consider it more of a red flag than anything else, but that's just me. So.
Somebody asked a question, um, saying I love you too fast is a red flag. Do you think they can be saying I love you so early because they don't really understand what love is being a teenager?
Yes. A yes. That's a resounding yes. Um, I mean, yeah, I mean, how do you know you're in love with somebody? And I mean, I'm 44 and I'm not completely sure that I know what it means. I've got a pretty good idea, but like when you've got like 13 and 14-year-olds saying I love you to like their partner, that's kind of a red flag for me as well. Like that's a really young age to really have a healthy concept of what love is. And there aren't always the best examples in social media, in literature that is aimed at kids. Example I think of often is Twilight. I know a lot of people think that's so romantic and such a great series. Personally, I take a lot of issue with it because I do feel like there is a very unhealthy, um, um, skewed amount of power and control. Again, if anyone's a Twilight fan, I do apologize. I know a lot of people love those books, but when you read them, it's about teenagers and they're in this passionate, committed relationship right away. They're in love right away. But Edward controls Bella quite a bit. He does things that people see as romantic that I would see as a red flag. That's just one example. I mean, so I think there's a lot of misinformation and romanticizing what love is, and it starts really young with kids, and it can start very easily just with Disney movies. That's a pretty good example, and it just sort of keeps going, and then by the time you're an adult, you're really trying to figure it out. So, yeah, saying I love you too fast, in short, is concerning as well. That's more of a red flag in my opinion, especially for kids.
I know you need to introduce the video, Molly, but I think it is important to say like one particular thing may not encompass, a whole sort of thing as being unhealthy. Like if this was just this is new, dating is new, being in a relationship is new, and they're saying I love you early, that all by itself may not necessarily be the red flag, but then it's like you're looking at the context of are there other things that are happening with that? What are some of the other things that are
Yeah.
going on with that relationship? So it's not always just one particular thing. It can be, but it's not always that. It's really what does the whole sort of context of the picture look like? And
Exactly.
I'll turn it back to you, Molly.
No, that's a very good point. Exactly. Like if that's the one concern that you have about your loved one that they're saying I love you too quickly, like okay, monitor, that's okay, monitor. But I mean, if they're saying I love you a week in or earlier or whatever, and also like having a sudden change of, who they spend their time with, how they spend their time, how they dress, how they act, it's a combination of things, and that can just be a precursor, is the quick I love yous. So
Can I add one more thing?
sure.
I would also just say that they, especially when we're young, we might not be mindful of our own needs and wants, and when we might feel like a boundary is being crossed. So also, having conversations about what's okay and what isn't, or what feels okay and what doesn't, and what our boundaries are can kind of help when they run into those situations.
Yeah. One thing that, I mean, one thing that's always a concern is that kids, especially girls, are really conditioned to be people pleasers. And I don't say that lightly. I know that I am still a people pleaser as well at my core. Um, and so sometimes, you feel like it's rude to say no or to correct somebody when when they make a statement about your relationship or, what your goals are as a couple or what you're going to do as a couple. So, um, it's good to pay attention to, is your child a people pleaser, and then add that into the mix of anything that might strike you as a red flag about the relationship. And also, because I know this is all very upsetting, I'm sure, for parents and concerning, and it's one more thing for you to worry about at night. I think that last year, Amy C. from WAAV made an extremely good example. Like, if you and your kids don't have a relationship where they come to you with all their problems and it's very open and they talk to you about very personal things, if they have a trusted adult that they talk to, definitely like let that be something that gives you a little bit of respite and a little bit of a warm heart, because it's if they're not talking to you, I'm sure that hurts. I don't have kids, so I don't know, but as long as they have an adult that they trust, that you trust, that they talk to, that's a big win as well. So. And oh yeah, sorry. And so this video that we're about to play for you, it's used in a lot of the trainings. We've used it each year. Um, and it sort of shows the evolution of a relationship where it can become abusive. So it starts out very happy, and you'll sort of watch as it sort of disintegrates.
Great. So what things did folks notice in the video that stood out to you? You can put a few things in the chat. Love bombing, yes, absolutely. Yeah, started off quickly, very controlling, smothering. Absolutely. And I think a lot of this stalking, yep, that's another one. Affected the friends, right? Feeling despair, starting to feel some hopelessness. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And a lot of it goes back to sort of when we did the waterfall chat, identifying some of those things that are contribute to healthy versus unhealthy relationships and abusive relationships. It started out one way and then changed into a very toxic one. That's absolutely right. And so I think this is where we want to remind ourselves that it's not really the type or the form of abuse that is sort of the key component. It's rather thinking about domestic violence in its root as power and control and the way that that power and control impacts the partner. In an abusive relationship, there's a clear and consistent imbalance in power between partners, where one partner is gaining power and control over time, while the other partner's life is becoming smaller and they're becoming more disempowered. So if you look at this particular video, you can see that the girlfriend in this video is becoming smaller in the sense of the importance that her life has in the context of their relationship, whereas things start to really revolve around his preferences, his needs, and the way that he's taking control over that relationship. Often folks think about abuse in a relationship as simply physical, which it certainly is physical at times, but it's not the only type of abuse, and that all forms of abuse have a really negative impact on the person that's experiencing that abuse, and that person is also experiencing trauma and life-altering impacts over time. And yes, thank you for putting in the chat losing autonomy, because that is a really key component of these relationships when they start to move into the abusive stage of it. And it's important to think about all relationships having a balance of power. Power is always balanced in relationships. In healthy relationships, that balance of power is routinely sort of negotiated, talked about. It's shared. You're acknowledging that in a relationship. And obviously for teens, they're figuring all of this out for the first time. So, we recognize, again, these are kids, and kids are learning on a spectrum. And that's why just sort of being aware, not only for the person in the relationship that might be experiencing control by a partner, but also recognizing if there's a partner in a relationship, one of your loved ones that you're seeing also behaving in a way that's excessively jealous or starting to, be kind of controlling over their partner. Those are opportunities for intervention as well. And this is just a great sort of overview of the different ways that power and control can take place in relationships. Some of those examples we saw in the movie, sort of some of the intimidation, sort of blaming, minimizing, making threats to hurt somebody, hurt their family, hurt their pet. Sexual coercion certainly happens in dating relationships. That isolation, exclusion, controlling what the other does, what they wear, who they spend time with, peer pressure, threatening to expose somebody's weaknesses, spread rumors. These are all different ways that control can be experienced within the relationship.
All right. And speaking of technical difficulties, I just want to take this moment to reintroduce myself. My name is Danielle. I'm with SAAV, or Stoneham Alliance Against Violence. And I've been their vice chair since 2023. So a lot of folks from last year's presentation had wanted to learn more about how technology is influencing teens. And so we want to address how this correlation could be impacting your teens' behaviors in their relationships. So dating online or technology use in teen relationships can be healthy and harmless, but here are some unhealthy tech behaviors to look out for. Excessive screen time or compulsive checking, so pressure to be available at all times. And it's good to note that, somebody can be the target of this behavior. They could also be the perpetrator of this behavior, or both. So tracking or stalking, pressure to share their location without mutual consent. So I say without mutual consent because some friends or partners do share their location with each other, and that's decided by both of them. So if that turns into feeling pressured to share your location or to share your whereabouts with somebody without that consent, then that's kind of where it goes into unhealthy territory. Demanding photos as proof of who you're with or what you're doing, and pressure to send explicit photos. Using passwords or accounts and accessing another person's phone without permission. And then hiding devices from a parent or caregiver, or being overly secretive about tech use. So how to talk to your teens about tech use and relationships. I think the biggest factor of ensuring relationship success and the key to healthy tech use is to make sure that you're building trust with your teen and role modeling those healthy behaviors first and foremost. So talk early, openly, and often about online safety and dating. Help them determine their own boundaries and how to set them. Be careful not to minimize relationships and remain judgment-free. And then respect their privacy and autonomy while prioritizing safety.
Danielle, can I just jump in for 1 second?
Yeah, sure.
I know a lot of people, parents, people my age might have issues with the location sharing. I had a huge issue with it at first.
Totally.
And I do teach this in my 8th grade classes, and they all share locations with all their friends. It's like on Snapchat, location sharing, all this. One of the things we talk about in class is being able to have a conversation with your teen or about how you will get out of sharing the location with them. So if you do mutually decide that you want to share your location when you're in the relationship, having a conversation with your teen about, okay, what happens when you don't want to share the location with that person anymore? Because apparently when friends or boyfriend, girlfriend, or girlfriend, or whatever stop sharing location, it's like a big deal. It's like that, like they stopped following you on whatever. So I think that it's good to have the conversation with your teen ahead of them sharing their location and say something like, have you thought about what you'll do if you break up, or if you don't want to share your location anymore? How will you handle that?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think, this wasn't something I had growing up. I didn't share my at all times with anybody except my mom. So it's definitely different, but I have seen it, with teens and adults alike. They share their location for fun, honestly, for safety purposes. And yeah, just as if they're following somebody on social media, it can kind of look like that as well. But it's definitely important for them to have mutual consent and autonomy when they want to opt out. So this kind of leads into tech abuse. So it is a type of abuse, and it happens when tech is used to gain power and control over another person. Technology can be used to stalk, harass, threaten, isolate, or financially abuse. Tactics can change rapidly. As with other forms of abuse, they often go unnoticed, as it typically happens privately. And the important thing to remember is that tech is a tool. It's not often the direct problem. Abuse can exist outside of technology, and it just gets misused to gain even more power and control over someone. But simultaneously, it can act as a beneficial resource for teens and those experiencing abuse. Tech does offer ways to reach out for support by calling a hotline or joining a virtual support group, remaining connected with friends and family, and it can be used to document and record abuse. So this kind of leads into AI safety. It's definitely new territory for us as adults, and I'm sure as parents and caregivers as well. So just like any other tech tool, AI has its benefits when used safely. In the age of AI, it's important to understand how teens are engaging with it and how to recognize harmful AI use. I personally am not a huge proponent for AI for many reasons, but it is here and teens are being exposed to it. So it's important to teach them as well as to role model safe AI interactions. The American Psychological Association urges parents to teach adolescents to navigate AI thoughtfully to maximize benefits while avoiding potential pitfalls, and give some advice on how to do so. So what parents can be doing in the age of AI is empowering your teens to actively question AI-generated content and use their critical thinking skills to come up with their own conclusions. Engage in face-to-face interactions and ensure AI supplements rather than replaces human connection. This comes up a lot in conversation where, kids and adults alike are using AI chatbots. So it can be confusing to understand that, especially for kids. These are program responses and they're not genuine relationships. So helping them understand that AI is not to supplement human interaction. Definitely remind them that AI info should never substitute professional medical advice. Ask your teen to show you the AI tools they're currently using so you can better understand what they're engaging with and how to help them. Everybody's kind of learning this at the same time. So, there might be some info you don't understand and you can learn together. And review privacy settings on devices together to ensure their personal data is not being misused. You can get a lot of this information and more articles through the American Psychological Association. They have a lot of good info that's easy to digest. So the next slide here is about breaking up safely online or in person. So breakups can be hard, but there are ways to help your teen do it respectfully and safely. When there are early warning signs of an unhealthy relationship, online or otherwise, moving too fast, coercion, stalking, overly jealous, threats, etc., it may be time for your teen to consider a breakup. But even if there are no red flags, your teen may decide they simply do not want to be in a relationship, and it's important to trust their decision as well as encourage them to trust their own intuition. So mass.gov has a breakup safely program. It's called Respectfully, and you can find it via the link there, mass.gov/respectfully. And they give safety tips like choosing the safest method to break up. So whether that's in person or call, text, FaceTime, creating a safety plan to let somebody close to you know about it. Plan what you want to say in advance and communicate clearly. Speak from your own perspective and avoid blaming and arguing. And then what we just discussed, turn off location sharing after a breakup and update any passwords if need be. Yeah.
There we go. So before I go to the slide, just to piggyback on what Danielle said about changing the passwords and stop sharing location. Just from experience working with clients, if your teen feels safe doing it, they should probably change passwords and unshare location before they proceed with the breakup in whatever manner they're choosing safely to do so. Just because it is not hard to, as a breakup is happening, for someone to hop in and just start messing around as like a last ditch effort to really get a last punch in. So just putting that out there. Um, how to support your teen. Thank you. How to support your teens. Again, I cannot stress enough that I only remember what it would like to be a teen myself. I am not a parent. I can only imagine how difficult it is, especially now. Um, but it's it's really important to not push and not to ask questions. Like I said before, Amy C had a really good idea and a really good point, that even if your teen or loved one doesn't come to you with every aspect of their life, as long as they have an adult in their life whom you trust as well, that they talk to, that's winning the battle right there. It's okay to ask questions, but don't push. The more you push, the more they will pull away. That's what I did as a kid. Um, limit unsupervised time that they have and contact that they have with the individual that they're in a relationship with. Um, talk about healthy relationships where you can, and try and demonstrate them as best you can with your partner or spouse. Um, Tell them what changes you've noticed in them if you are noticing things that you perceive as a red flag or that you feel are a red flag, because sometimes in the middle of it, you don't realize how much you are changing as a person when you're in a relationship where you don't have an equal balance of power and control. So it's always good to say, hey, you used to really enjoy this, or you used to really enjoy that, and suddenly you don't do those things anymore. You used to hang out with these people a lot. What happened to them? Did you guys have a fight? Things like that. You can make it as innocuous as you need to if you're worried about, pushing your loved one away. It's really important to listen non-judgmentally and to be supportive. A lot of times it's like, this is something I say to adults in training. It's like, don't ask yes or no questions, ask open-ended questions, because when you require a yes or no question to an answer to a question, you're forcing them to make a decision or to state a fact or agree to a fact that they may not be comfortable agreeing with. Open-ended questions are best, to the best of your ability. If they're telling you something, believe them. Believe them. It's better to realize, I believe them a little too quickly later on than to not believe them and for the situation to get worse, but they just no longer trust you to tell you what's going on. Talk about behaviors, not the person. I think that kind of speaks for itself. You don't want to open a conversation with, so and so seems like a real blank, or you just keep about behaviors and things that you're noticing. Keep it non-confrontational, as neutral as possible. I can't stress this enough. Avoid ultimatums. If you don't do this, we're going to do this, or you're not going to be able to do this. Ultimatums will push your kid away. It pushes adults away. It'll push kids away too. Um, and if you feel comfortable and you see the opportunity, talk about a safety plan with your loved one. And if you're not able to have that conversation, sort of maybe think about scenarios where, if something happens, how you can respond to help maintain the safety of your loved one in the moment. Does that make sense? I apologize. I kind of feel like I'm rushing through it. So if anyone has questions, please put them in the chat. I'm more than happy to stop.
Thank you, Molly. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. And just to build off what Molly had said, we know that adolescence is a time that's heavily shaped by kids' friends and their social groups, and close friendships during the teenage years can provide emotional support, and often friends are consulted first before a teen might come to a parent. So we wanted to touch on how you can support your teen who might be supporting a friend that is experiencing dating abuse. And a lot of what Molly shared is applicable here as well. A lot of those strategies that she spoke about. I think overall, it's about encouraging that empathy muscle in your teen. Helping them and encouraging them to listen to their friend, and also reinforce to your teen, who can reinforce to their friend, that everyone deserves a healthy relationship, that you are worthy of a healthy relationship. And I think it's important to, like Molly was saying, believe your child if they're telling you something, helping your child believe the friend that's telling them that they're experiencing something difficult. I think the two other most important things that I wanted to highlight around this slide is helping your teen identify resources that might be available to teenagers to support them in, creating a safety plan or getting out of an abusive situation. There are lots of hotlines and resources, and we're sharing them in our resource sheet that will accompany this workshop where teens can have that access. And the most important thing, I think, is to help your teen identify trusted adults that can help support this friend going through this situation. It's not your teen's responsibility for their friend's safety. That lies with, as we say in the slide, with caregivers, trained professionals, and trusted adults. It is, as a friend, you want to emotionally support, but as we know, there are problems that are too big for us to handle ourselves, and that's where the trusted adults can come in. So helping your teen identify who those trusted adults are in this friend's life, that they might be able to reach out to. And I imagine part of that conversation might be, well, what if they're mad at me? What if I lose, what if they don't want to be my friend anymore because they feel like I violated their trust? And it's this idea of better to lose a friendship than a friend. So helping them understand that there are certain things that you just have to reach out for help. So those are some things that we want to share with you all. But we know, as we've talked about, that having these pathways of open communication with our teens, it is really helpful and really protective on a lot of fronts, not just with teen dating abuse. But we also want to recognize that communicating with teens can be really challenging, especially when topics are difficult or sensitive or feel private, like teen dating abuse. So that's why we're so happy to have Rebecca Taplin here, a Melrose resident and a mom to a Melrose Public School student who's from Pathways to Restorative Communities, who's going to share some mindsets and some strategies that we as parents and caregivers and trusted adults can use with the kids we care about, that will help fortify those lines of healthy communication and really deepen our relationships. So I'm going to pass it over to you, Rebecca. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for all that information, everybody. I just learned so much by listening to all of you and your expertise. So thank you so much for your portion this evening. The second part of this presentation is about how you can start and continue building relationships with the teens and loved ones in your lives that will help them be better romantic partners, help them advocate for themselves, and help keep you in the loop with what's going on with them. So this part, I'm going to start sharing my screen, is called Communication and Relationship Skills, a Restorative Approach for Parents. Again, my name is Rebecca Taplin. I'm from Pathways to Restorative Communities. And I just want to, before I continue, I always do a land acknowledgement before I do any presentation. So I just want to do that quickly. I'm a facilitator for restorative practices, and restorative practices are not new. I did not make them up. They are ancient. My ancestors, your ancestors, and many people around the world today still live in relationship with each other, in strong relationship with each other. I want to acknowledge several First Nations peoples who have contributed to restorative work, including the Hollow Water First Nation on Lake Winnipeg and members of the Carcross-Tagish and the Daka-Tlingit First Nations in Yukon. Pathways to Restorative Communities is located on the ancestral land of the Massachusetts and Pawtucket people. And if you'd like to learn more about the land you live on, or you'd like to support local Indigenous peoples, you can go to these two places below, mcnaa.org or native-land.ca. Hold on. There we go. So I'm going to be sharing with you 6 skills tonight, things that you can use to support your teen and keep your relationship with them strong. I'll read through them now. The first is restorative mindset. Sorry, there we go. Okay. Is restorative mindset. The next is a skill called pause. Then creating an environment with high expectations and high connection. The listening protocol, affective statements, and restorative questions. And I think you're going to see a lot of the points that all these incredible presenters spoke about today. And the skills that I'm going to share with you will help you put these things into place. So how do we start connecting in our world, connecting with our students? With our children and the loved ones in our lives. We start that with our mindset and we shift our mindset. So what is a mindset? It's the way we frame our thinking, and our mindset guides our approach to people and situations. It informs how we engage or work with the people in our lives. And a restorative mindset, what I'm going to be talking about today, this is the foundation, is a way of being that places an emphasis on healthy, respectful relationships as a central value. And that's why when I was first talking with Meredith about doing this, I was like, this is exactly what all the work I do in my life is about. I work in schools with families, all kinds of things. And this is a slide that I've been showing for years and years. And here we are sharing it with you tonight as well. So tonight's about you helping your teens navigate healthy, respectful relationships, just as I'm sharing here. A quick note is that a restorative mindset or any of the skills that I'm sharing with you tonight is not a substitute for professional medical or mental health care or counseling. This is something that you can do as a baseline in your life and with your family, but it's not a therapeutic thing. It's your mindset and your approach. I wanted to make that clear with you. What it is, though, is it's a choice. And this is our first skill, choosing a restorative mindset. So choosing to view the world through a restorative lens is a moment-by-moment decision. And here are the things that you can decide to do in each moment. To be curious and open-minded instead of judgmental. To utilize strengths-based thinking, so seeing a difficulty or a challenge as an opportunity and not a problem. And then to always treat others with dignity and respect. You can have big emotions, and you can always treat people with dignity and respect. You can be angry, you can be frustrated, you can have all the feelings you need to have and still treat others with dignity and respect. The great thing about a restorative mindset is on the left side of the screen, it's a moment-by-moment choice. If you can't be restorative in one moment, there will always be another moment where you can choose to be restorative. So adults with loved ones in your lives, with teens in your lives, we are the ones that set the tone in our home, and our kids are going to reflect us. So our values matter. The way we behave, we talk, they're going to be listening and watching. Even if you think they're totally ignoring you, they're listening and watching. So being able to show curiosity, strengths-based thinking, and always treating others with dignity and respect is this incredible model for your teens, and that hopefully they will begin to reflect in their own lives. So that's your first skill, trying to be curious and open-minded, thinking of your kids' strengths, and always treating others with dignity and respect. I actually have this on a note card next to my desk. Hold on. There it is, right there. I have it there, and it's really, really helpful just to think curious, strengths, dignity, to help you in maybe a tough moment. So write it out like I did, stick it in your wallet, put it on your phone background, pop it on your fridge, and it will help you remind you of this mindset. So how do you get yourself into a restorative mindset? And one way is to try to start developing your own empathy for others and to think about what might be causing a behavior or a situation you're noticing in the teen in your lives. So how many of you have seen this before, have seen something about behavior as communication, or seen this iceberg? I'm seeing some nodding heads here. Awesome. So Um, this is a great graphic organizer, and here's the idea. What you see, oh, sorry, I just gave away something. What you see at the top are behaviors, the thing that you might notice about your kid, right? And underneath those behaviors are the feelings that might be causing that behavior. But then deep underneath all of that is what you don't see. And what's down there are needs that may or may not be being met, and then skills that may have some level or another of strength in your loved one. So let's just take a quick look at some positive behaviors just to give you a sense of how this works. So if your loved one is asking for help, maybe in a dating situation, or they're not sure what to do with a friend group or something like that, they're asking for help, or they're being respectful to their partner, they're being respectful to their siblings and to the adults in their lives. You might imagine they're having feelings like trust or confidence. I was thinking about some of those things that we wrote in the chat about the healthy relationships, right? You might be imagining those kinds of things are happening if you're seeing these kinds of behaviors. Excuse me. So, if you're seeing maybe some negative behaviors or maybe some of those red flags, I was thinking about defiance. Maybe they've snuck out of the house or something like that. They're changing their behaviors. Perhaps they're disengaging from family life. They're losing their friends groups, things like that, right? You might imagine they might be having some feelings such as anger or sadness. And of course, there are like thousands of emotions, so I've really just kept it nice and simple for us here. But let's now think about what might be underneath those feelings. So this is a relationship webinar. So let's start with maybe some relationship needs. So their self-esteem might be affected, whether with a friend group or with their partner. A sense of belonging, right? Can they be themselves in a group? Can they really feel like they're being themselves? Again, as I'm doing this presentation, I'm like really hearing a lot of echoing as to what the folks said before me. And of course, a sense of connection. Do they have an adult in their life that's not you that they're connecting with? Do they have a friend group? Do they have people that they feel connected to? And the next piece is something like your physical needs. Have you had enough food? Have you had enough sleep? Do you feel safe? Right? These are these safety pieces. And then our last piece are skills, social skills, right? Do they know how to set boundaries? Developmental skills. Are they able to communicate clearly? And self-regulation skills, right? Having those big emotions and being able to do something healthy with those emotions, to be able to handle their emotions, to regulate themselves in order to handle hard things. So maybe the skills need to be worked on. Maybe there's a deficit, or maybe there's a strength that you can lean on. Remember that restorative mindset to help a student, I keep saying student, I'm sorry, to help a teen get through a tough time. All right, so say you notice a behavior by your teen that you feel like you need to address. So tap into that curiosity and wonder, what is my kid telling me with this behavior? How might they be feeling right now? And what do they need that they don't have? And what skills might be coming into play? And when you see a behavior that normally you might like race to react to, take a minute to be curious. And this can really help develop your empathy, slow you down, and it might really pay off when you eventually have a conversation with your loved one about what you've noticed. So, how might you be able to get yourself to slow down and get yourself to think about how behavior is communication and what might be going on? Well, that's our second skill. It's called PAUSE. I kind of made it up as an acronym based on something that we've always been teaching. But here's what you do. And this might sound familiar if you meditate, if you have mindfulness, but there's some other things in there that I think will really help as well. The first thing you do, the P is for pause. So you see some behavior, something happens and you really want to react right away, but just stop for a second. Notice your stress level and any tension in your body, right? For me, when I get triggered by something my daughter does, I feel anxious in my stomach and then I get really hot. So knowing what triggers you and being able to recognize that is really helpful. The A is air. Slow your breathing down. Take a few deep breaths to calm your nervous system. You can even say, this is what I say, I feel like I'm going to yell right now, and I don't want to. So I'm just going to take a breath instead. Right? I'm modeling that I don't want to yell. I'm angry or I'm frustrated, and I'm just going to take a breath instead. The next piece is something that might be a little different from what you may have heard before, and that's the U is to understand. Reflect on what's going on in your own head. What is factual about what you just observed or noticed, and what might be an assumption, a fear, or a past experience? And one of my partner always said that her daughter says, Mom, is this an ish you or an ish me? So thinking about like you noticed a behavior, I'm just trying to think, oh, I was just talking about my daughter playing video games, right? So if I notice my kid's been playing video games for a long time, I could be like, oh no, she's going to stop being friends with people and only be online. And that comes from a time when I lied to my grandmother when I was playing video games for too long when I was a teenager, right? So is she okay? She's going to be okay. We might need to talk about how long she's playing on video games, but she's not going to lie to her grandmother. It's going to be okay. So that slows you down. The S is choosing how you want to respond rather than reacting automatically. How do you want to respond? And that's when you go back to that responsive mindset and you decide how you want to respond. And then the E is if you're not ready, you can ask for more time. What you just did really made me upset, and I'm feeling nervous or scared or whatever it is, and I just need a couple minutes, but I want to talk about this later. So, pausing like this protects the relationship that you have with the loved one in your life, even if that conversation is hard. Taking that moment before you react models that when your child is angry, they can do the same thing. They don't need to react immediately in anger. They can pause and do these things for themselves. And it shows that you care about them and you're going to be listening to them and trying to treat them with dignity and respect. How many of you do some of these things already? Can you write in the chat if there's one of these things that you try to do already? Pause and take a breath. Pause and air. Paying attention to what your reaction is about. Say that you need a minute to process. Wonderful. Yeah. I think being transparent with your loved one is really, really helpful. Showing that and modeling that. Wonderful. Thank you. So that's, oh, yes, extending the time, knowing that you can come back to it later. You always can. So that's your second skill. Pause. Next. So this is for those of you who like graphic organizers. This is a foundational piece of restorative practices, and it is called the social relational window. Has anyone seen this before? Quick show of hands. Has anybody seen this before? Ooh, all right. I love this. It's really, really incredible. And it helps frame having high levels of expectation with high levels of connection. I was thinking a lot about the boundaries, setting boundaries with people. And I think that the social relational window can really help you model boundaries and help your kid model boundaries if they need to with somebody that they're in a relationship as well. So as you can see, there are 4 quadrants. On the y-axis are expectations. So that's like control and limit setting. So I was thinking about limiting alone time with the teens. I'm thinking about some of the things I saw on the earlier slides, helping them think about if they want to share location or not, those kinds of things. Control and limit settings are expectations, and it goes from low to high. And then on the x-axis, we've got your levels of connection. That's the support and encouragement that you're going to give to the loved one in your life. And that also goes from low to high. So I was also thinking about this in terms of power sharing. If you're looking at a relationship that one of your loved ones in, you could take a look at this and think about this. So as we go through that, try to have those things in mind. So that top left quadrant, where it's high expectations, but low levels of connection. First, I want to say one thing before I go on. You are going to bounce around in all of these quadrants throughout every day and throughout your whole lifetime, depending on what's going on and depending on your mood and your capacity. And that's okay. You also might notice as I talk through these that you have a default. Oh, I always go this one. I always land in this quadrant or that quadrant, and try to notice that as well. Okay, now back to the top quadrant. High levels of expectation, lots of control, lots of limits, but very little connection. You might need to be in that quadrant with your loved one if you do need to set a boundary with them or you need to intervene if something's happening. But if you are there all the time, and that's the only way that you interact with somebody, we call this the doing to quadrant. It's a punitive style. And again, I'm hearing echoes of the earlier presentation where you talked about alienation can be an outcome of an abusive relationship. So always being in the doing to quadrant is going to lead to alienation in the relationship. Let's go down to low areas of low expectation and low levels of connection. You might need to be in that quadrant if you are rushing off to a thing and you wrote a note to the kid and they asked a question and you couldn't answer it and you needed to rush out the door because you'd get fired otherwise, right? That's one way to be if you need to be that way. But if you're there all the time, we call that the not quadrant. It's a neglectful style. And it ultimately leads to isolation in that relationship. I think that's a little bit different from the isolation from friends thing and things we were talking about earlier. But the isolation happens because the person that you're the authoritarian in the house, and if you ignore them all the time, right, then they're not going to feel any connection and they're not going to understand their boundaries either. So it will lead to isolation. Let's go to the right. Lots of connection, lots of support and encouragement. This is where a lot of people think that restorative practices are, and I don't think that's true. But that's giving your kid a break if they just had a really hard day and letting them off the hook for chores or something like that. You might need to do that. But if you're there all the time, it's called the doing for. It's a permissive style. And ultimately, it will lead to dependence. This person in your life will always be looking to you to make the decisions. They will look to you to make the boundaries for them. And they won't learn the skills they need in order to set their own healthy boundaries and be able to share power with people in their lives. So one of these quadrants is not like the other. This top right quadrant is high levels of expectation and high levels of connection. This is the only one where if you're trying to be here all the time, we have an outcome that we're looking for. We call this the with quadrant, doing with. It's the restorative quadrant. We're restoring those relationships that our ancestors used to have. We're relying on each other. We're sharing power. And if you're here more often than not, the outcome in the relationship. The great thing about the with quadrant is you don't have to do high expectations and connection at the same time. If you need to set that boundary and be strict, do it. And then later you can come back and have a conversation and a cup of tea and, apologize for your sharp tone or whatever it happened to be. And you can say, are we okay? What do we need to do? And then you can go back to that connective piece. If you've given them a break because something's going on, and you've only led with connection, you can go back later and say, well, I'd like you to think about what you might be able to do to make the situation better or something like that, right? So not doing it for them all the time and working with them. I loved when you talked about working with your teen to make a safety plan, having them think about what might work for them. I thought that was really awesome. I think it definitely leads to more connection, and it leads to a safer and sort of happier outcome for everyone. So as I said before, you can use this social relational window to look at the relationships that the loved one in your life have with others, with their friends, who they're dating, for example. You can show this to them and say, I'm just thinking about my relationship with my friends or with my partner, and where do you think we are, and where are you with your friends? You can talk about this with them, which could be kind of fun, maybe, if they're into that. And I come back to the social relational window all the time, and I've been doing this work for many, many years. You can find this online pretty easily. I'll also share my slides at the end. So you could print this out. You can, if you're really struggling with interacting with your teen, you could maybe map out an interaction and think about what you could do, what you could add, in order to get yourself closer to that with quadrant with your loved one. And remember, this stuff doesn't all have to be done at once. You build up, you think of it as a place to get to, and you come back to it time and time again to help kind of refresh your approach that you're having with your loved one. All right. Ted Wachtel is the sort of the grandfather of of restorative practices here in the US. And he really puts this skill into place, which is the underlying premise of restorative practices rests with the belief that people will make positive changes when the people in positions of authority, that's us, do things with them rather than to them or for them. And again, we do have more power than the kids that we're taking care of, the kids that we're raising. We have that by nature of being the adults. If we demonstrate power sharing, how powerful is that to show your kids that you can do this? And that's a tremendous model for them when they're in a relationship with other people as well. Would anybody want to share where they found their what they thought their default quadrant is? I'm definitely land in the doing for quadrant. I'm always like, oh, buddy, let's have a cup of tea and snuggle. Does anybody, two or three people might want to share what their defaults are? Oh, I'm hearing it, doing for. My partner, Beth, is very proud and loud about saying she's in the doing to quadrant. She's always got to come back and and connect afterwards. Yeah. Starting with connection is always wonderful, right? And then adding in, balancing in with high expectations can be a thing you can add in later. And that's something I've been working on pretty hard. Thank you. All right, I'm going to go back to my screen share if I can. Make sure. All right, hold on. I'm so sorry. It says it's been paused. Is it really paused? All right, I'm going to come back and just share over again, okay? Everybody can see? Awesome. Okay. All right. So say your kid has exhibited a behavior that you need to address. You see a red flag. Either you think they may have caused a red flag or something happened with them in the relationship that you think they might be, the one with the lower power dynamic. So you've paused, you've done the pause, you've accessed your curiosity, you're sort of wondering about what skills or needs might be wondering what happened. right? You're trying to keep this balance of high expectations and connection, but like, how do you actually talk to them about it? It can feel really hard sometimes just to say the words out loud. Like, what if I say the wrong thing? What if I mess up and I screw it all up and it's ruined and I can never go back to it? Skill number 4 that I'll share with you tonight is called affective statements, and that's going to help you start to talk about some of these things. It's really helpful. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a scenario, and we'll go through it. And I'm going to walk through how we sort of progressed over time to get from like that knee-jerk response before you pause, like if you just react in the moment, to a nonviolent communication affective statement. I think it's really helpful to see how we got there. But first, I'll tell you the scenario. So let's say um, the loved one in your life, this teen that you're raising, and the person they're dating, we're going to say your child's name is Max and the person they're dating's name is Riley. They're at your house, and you overhear that Max, your kid, makes a mistake, like forgets something and screws something up, and Riley gets really, really frustrated and says, "Oh my God, you are so frustrating. How could you have screwed that up? You're so stupid." And your child, Max, is like, "Oh, I'm sorry," or just goes quiet. Okay, red flag. Riley leaves, right? And you want to intervene in some way. You want to talk to Max. So your knee-jerk reaction might be in that moment, "Oh my God, why did you let Riley talk to you like that?" Right? You're supposed to be a strong person. Why would you let somebody talk to you like that? Right? If you don't have time to think, that might be something you would say. Why questions? If there's one thing you take away from tonight, honestly, is to just wipe why questions out when you're feeling agitated or triggered. I loved when I think it was Molly that said open-ended questions, but not why questions, right? So why would you do that? Like, what? There's so much. They can never answer that question in one moment. Why makes you defensive as well. So, all right. So let's try an I statement, right? I have a feeling. I'm going to share that feeling with you. So the example I statement might be, "Oh, I'm really disappointed. I'm just really disappointed you didn't stand up for yourself when Riley put you down." But there's like a big problem with that statement, because let's think about what just happened. Riley put Max down, and then you told Max that you were disappointed in them. So what you're doing, if that happens, is we're making a judgment. We're blaming the teen for our own feelings, where they're the one that was harmed. Okay, so here's where the script comes in. It's so helpful and so lovely. So we say the behavior, we say what we noticed, we talk about our emotion, and then we have an ask. "When I overheard Riley call you stupid, I felt really protective of you because, I mean, I like people to be kind even when they're frustrated. Can you tell me what's going on?" Right? So the way that it moves from us putting all the onus and the burden on Max, when something pretty unpleasant happened to them, to you're sharing that you feeling protective of them. You're talking about a value that you have that's really important. And then you want to open the conversation to something else, right? To what's going on. So here's what that looks like. An affective statement is something that focuses on the behavior, not the person. I heard that earlier tonight as well. They are respectful in tone. They encourage others to express their feelings. They provide authentic observation. They establish boundaries. They develop empathy, but they always avoid criticizing, scolding, and shaming. So say you were Riley's parent and Max left the house and you wanted to talk to Riley, right? you could make an affective statement pretty similar. When I overheard you calling Max stupid, I felt really protective of them because even when you're frustrated, I like people to have kind language. Can you tell me what's going on? Right? Very similar statement. And you've used language that avoids criticizing, scolding, and shaming, but you've also called attention to what's going on and you're opening up the conversation. Here's the script. When I heard or saw or noticed, I felt this way. You're talking about your feelings. You can't imagine what they're feeling like. You can talk about that later. Because this is something I value or I need or I like. Would you be willing to blank? And if you start using this, I will tell you that I've noticed my kid has used this with her friends. It's really wild. So modeling it, teaching it, and then that can be a skill that they can start using in their own relationships. This script feels awkward at first. I'm going to tell you that right now. You can try it with a low stakes situation at first, like a missed homework assignment or they sassed their brother or sister or something like that. Or you can use it with a positive situation, like, oh, when I saw you, hanging out with your friends, I felt really proud because I love that you have such a great group of friends. And you don't have to have an ask for a positive one. But you can start with something positive or like a low level situation. And that's why you can start practicing now with these low stakes situations so that when things get heavier, it'll feel more natural and you'll develop wording that feels more genuine to you. Joe Brummer is Joe Brummer is the person who revamped those affective statements on that first slide that I was sharing with about this. And he said, we need to make sure we can model the discipline we're trying to get from our children. If we want children who can use their words rather than violent actions to express themselves, we need to model how it's done. And using that script can be really. So that was the fourth skill. So what happens? So this is all about you initiating a conversation with your loved one. But what happens when they want to talk to you about something? And I'm going to introduce a skill that will help you listen in a way that will build trust and will encourage your kids to keep talking to you. Again, I remember when Molly said, you keep pushing, you keep asking questions, and they're going to pull back and not share anything. I shared nothing with my parents, like nothing. And I learned this listening protocol, and it changed my life. It changed so many things. It's so simple and so hard. Are you ready? Here we go. So here's the listening protocol. It's a way of listening when they come and talk to you. Maybe they want to talk about drums. Maybe they want to talk about robotics club. Maybe they want to talk about a frustration with their friend, or they want to tell you what they did with their partner. Great. But whenever they start talking about whatever it is, you can practice this protocol. Because when given the space to speak, teens will often say a lot more than you'd expect. So here are the do's. They start talking. You listen without interruption. You don't say, yeah, or ooh, or what, or say more, or I have a question. You just let them talk. You can use nonverbal responses, like it's goofy, whatever it is, just smile, frown, nonverbal responses. When they're done, when they've talked themselves out, you thank them for sharing. Thank you for telling me that. Wow, what a story, right? Then you can name emotions and ask if they want help or advice. So when you're listening, you're not listening for what you want to say back to them. You're listening so you can try and hear how they're feeling, so you can reflect that back to them. So, oh, wow, it sounds like you felt really embarrassed when that happened. Wow. Did you just need to vent, or do you want to talk through, what to do, what to say next time you see them? right? So you thank them. "Oh, thank you for telling me that." You reflect what you heard back. You can even say, "Did I hear that right? Is that right? Is that how you're feeling?" And then you can ask, "Do you want help, or did you just need to vent? Did you just need to talk that through?" What you don't do is you don't interrupt. You don't correct them in that moment. So say they swear and you hate swearing, right? Say they tell you something that you're like, "Oh my God, we need to talk about that. You did what? You sent them what picture?" Right? You don't correct them in that moment. If you let them keep talking, you're going to find out a lot more than if you stop and correct them in that moment. Be supportive in this moment, right? Thinking about that social relational window, connect with them, and you can talk to them about the thing that needs to be talked about later. Don't make it about you. Don't say, "That the same exact thing happened to me, and this is how I felt, and this is what I did." Or don't feel offended if they share something with you that, well, maybe you can feel offended, but don't voice it or say, "That really hurt my feelings," right? Don't make it about you. They're sharing something with you. Just let it go. Let it happen. Again, you can talk about it later, but in this moment, just let it be about them. And then, of course, if you say, "Do you want any advice?" and they say no, then don't give any advice. If you give advice after they've said no, what was the point in you asking if they'd like to hear some advice for you? You can say, "I have some thoughts about this. If you want to talk about it later, let me know. I got some ideas." And then zip it. I just want to make sure I have this thing. So again, this is so much harder than you might imagine it to be. I always want to ask questions and engage and tell my stories, but just sitting and listening is just so powerful. It's so amazing. So I really hope you guys try it. You can start with something low stakes like drums or robotics club or whatever it is, or lunch. This way, when something bigger comes up, you will have practiced. You'll know how to do it. So that's the fifth skill, the listening protocol. All right, last skill. How are we doing on time? I'm going to go through this pretty quickly because we may have questions and I want to leave plenty of time for questions. This skill is a pretty advanced skill for restorative practices, and they're called restorative questions. They're used in schools as an alternative to suspension and expulsion. These are used with police departments and law enforcement. And they're used in my living room sometimes after something unpleasant has happened. So these are a set of questions so anybody who's trying to do this will use basically these exact kinds of questions. And here they are. What happened, or what's going on? What were you thinking at the time? What were you thinking when this happened? And maybe some time has passed. You can say, "Well, what have you thought about since that happened? Who was affected by that and how? And what do you think needs to happen to make things right?" Did you notice how I didn't say, "What happened?" Right? I was using my restorative mindset. I was being curious. Whoa, what happened? Right? I'm being non-judgmental. I'm breathing. I'm checking my own responses. I'm ready to listen. All of those things happen. And these are questions that you can ask your teen, whether you think that they may have caused a red flag to happen or the red flag's happening to them. These questions work for anybody in a situation where harm has occurred. The first question I have, what happened or what's going on, it's like italicized and underlined because sometimes that's the only question you need to ask. These other questions can be helpful and help you move through a process to find out what's going on and find a way to move forward. But sometimes just asking what happened in that curious tone can give you everything that you need. Excuse me. So maybe there's a behavior change you want to address. Maybe, you want to have a more extensive conversation after they've shared something with you, something like that. So I'm going to, excuse me. Gosh, I have these questions. I can't find it right now. I have these questions. Oh, here they are on a note card. And on the front are the questions themselves, and on the back are the restorative mindset principles. If any of you want one of these, I have these on my fridge. If you want one of these to help sort of you frame your mindset or remember what these questions are, you can contact me. I'll give you my contact information in a minute, and I can meet you or send you one so you can have one of these cards for you. A lot of schools have these cards and they use them, which is pretty cool. I'm going to, thanks. The last thing I want to do is just review. This was a lot. I reviewed 6 ways that you can practice skills of communication and relationship with your child, the teen you're raising, the loved one in your life who you want to support. And these are just introductions to all of these things, but I hope that you can think of maybe something you might want to try with in the next week. So the last thing I want to do is ask you to write in the chat maybe something you might think about trying with a young person in your life. Be brave. I also want to let you all know that Pathways to Restorative Communities is doing a caregiver workshop. It's 4 nights in 4 Tuesdays in March, where we go way more in depth with all of these skills. Hold on, I want to make sure I have this. It's called Restorative Parenting. And oh, you'll meet tons of other parents. We actually all still get together. Everybody who's taken the class gets together about once a month, and we talk about issues that are going on and share with each other and just provide that support network that we as grown-ups like really need as we raise children in our lives. So that QR code on the screen takes you to some more information about our workshop. We'd love it if you would join us because we're all trying to get these healthy relationships in order. So thank you so much for your attention during this time, and I will turn it back to the rest of the group.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Rebecca, for those tools. You gave us so much to think about and practice. I really appreciated the concrete strategies that you offered us to be able to apply to our own relationships as we try to support our youth. So thank you so much. So I'm going to turn it over to Molly. She's going to highlight some resources in addition to what Rebecca had provided. We have some additional resources for you. I'm going to make sure we share.
All right, so there are 5 major ones obviously on this page. We have, of course, MAVE, the Melrose Alliance Against Violence. We have REACH, which is a 24/7 hotline. Their catchment area is quite large. We have WAAV, of course, which is the Wakefield Alliance Against Violence. MAVE and WAVE are both extremely important and highly valued community partners that I very much appreciate. Of course, there is Respond. I'm biased. I'll leave it at that, but we do have a support line Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And also, I work Monday through Friday at 3 different police departments. So if you ever want to speak directly with me, you can always call support line and ask for me, and then you can be transferred or a message can be relayed, and I'll call you back. And of course, last but by no means least, you have SAAV, which is the Stoneham Alliance Against Violence. And I believe my colleague that covers the other 3 partner police agencies works with SAAV a bit as well. So, and this is just a QR code. You can go ahead and scan it, and then it actually will take you to the resources that we mentioned today as well.
So I'm going to stop the recording and we're going to open it up to questions. Okay.